You love watching France24 in English.
Analysis from France24. I'm Mark Owen. These are the main world news.
To the border with Algeria.
Huge lines since this morning to answer that question.
But France24 is also available in French.
14h à Paris, bonjour à tous, bienvenue si vous nous revenez sur France 24 préparez-vous.
And Arabic.
شعبية هذا الباب القادم من أمريكا الجنوبية في ازدياد
Also coming up.
Featured on cable and satellite systems and online media in France and across the world.
These days, there are many places to stay. But how can you avoid nasty surprises? With AccorHotels.com, you'll always make the right choice at a guaranteed best price. As a true online hotel company, we feature not only our own hotels, but hotels from our partners too. Your stay is sure to exceed your expectations. Book now on AccorHotels.com. AccorHotels.com. Feel welcome from the first click.
Hello and a very warm welcome. If you're just joining us here on France24, you're watching live from Paris, of course, today with extensive coverage of the Orlando shooting. Authorities are beginning to release the names of the victims of the massacre. The deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history has left 50 people dead. 21 names have so far been made public. We'll be live in Orlando in just a moment. Who exactly was Omar Mateen, the shooter, and what were his links to the Islamic State group? That's the question being asked today. The jihadist group is now calling him a soldier of their caliphate in America. And the Muslim community was quick to denounce the attack and express support for the victims. The killer's own imam says the killing doesn't reflect what was preached at his mosque. 24 hours after the worst mass shooting in the U.S. has ever known, the world is beginning to learn the names, the faces, and stories of those who were killed. Authorities are currently working to formally identify all 50 victims and notify their families. 21 names so far have been made public. The victims were young, many of them Latino, who never came back from their night out. In Orlando, our team attended several vigils overnight. Here's their report.
A few roses and many tears. Mike and Carlos have come here just a few meters away from where the carnage unfolded to pay tribute to the victims.
We were supposed to come here yesterday, but we decided to stay local, so we actually stood home, but we heard of it and we're not even from here, we're from New York, so we're just like, we have to come to pay our respects. These are our brothers and sisters that died.
Many locals say they feel overwhelmed with pain. These two didn't know each other just a few hours ago, but now they're here to support one another.
I don't know who he is, actually. I just know that he was at the bar. We did see each other, so that's how we were able to recognize him.
I saw two of my friends that got killed, and it's such a, oh my God, words can't even express my emotion right now. I can't talk. It's kind of like breathless. Like, and to figure that I was like literally at the club minutes away from the incident occurring is the most shocking to me, because as I was going out, he was walking in.
Chris, however, was in the club when the shooter opened fire.
When you hear the bang, bang, and you're like, okay, it's just a song, but then when you hear screaming and more bang, 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 just continuous, you realize that it's not, it's real. And I look behind me over my shoulder, and the VIP, everybody just dropped and fell.
Orlando is mourning, and families are still waiting to hear from their loved ones. The process of identifying victims has been agonizingly slow. A website has been set up to list those who died in the tragic shooting once their families have been notified.
Who exactly is the shooter Omar Mateen? An American citizen, son of Afghan immigrants. We know that he pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group during a phone call with 911 shortly before going on his killing spree. But the nature of his links to the jihadist group is still unclear, and his ex-wife describes him as mentally ill.
This is a photo that Omar Mateen posted of himself to social media. The 29-year-old lived here in Port St. Lucie, some 200 kilometers away from the Orlando Pulse nightclub. Born in New York to Afghan parents, he worked as a security guard at a facility for juvenile delinquents and had 2 firearms licenses. But despite having a clean criminal record, he was known to law enforcement officials.
The FBI first became aware of Mateen in 2013 when he made inflammatory comments to co-workers alleging possible terrorist ties. In the course of the investigation, Mateen was interviewed twice. Ultimately, we were unable to verify the substance of his comments, and the investigation was closed.
The FBI says that moments before going on the deadly rampage, Mateen made a 911 call in which he claimed allegiance to the Islamic State group. But on Sunday, his father insisted that his son's actions had nothing to do with religion. He told US media that the sight of 2 men kissing on a street in Miami a few months ago had angered Mateen. His ex-wife also paints a disturbing picture, that of an abusive and unpredictable husband, who she says used to beat her.
A few months after we were married, I saw his instability, and I saw that he was bipolar and he would get mad out of nowhere. That's when I started worrying about my safety, and then after a few months he started abusing me physically very often and not allowing me to speak to my family.
Both Mateen's ex-wife and his father claim that he had never showed signs of religious extremism. Investigators are now trying to figure out exactly what drove him to end the lives of dozens of innocent people.
François Bernard Rigue is a research director at IRIS, a French research lab on foreign relations. He joins us now to try and shed some more light on what happened yesterday in Orlando. Mr. Rigue, not so long ago, it was often said that Western intelligence services were now able to detect and thwart complex terror attacks, and the only real vulnerability was with lone wolves. But it seems that, be it in France or now in the US, people who do have direct links to terror networks are able to execute their plans and carry out attacks. What do you make of that, and what do you make of the state of security services in the US and indeed in the Western world?
Well, apparently the Islamic State is able to perform 2 kinds of attacks. One is rather sophisticated with a commando of people who have criminal records like we had in France at the end of last year in Bataclan. And on the other hand, as advised in the literature, they can trigger off the action of so-called lone wolves. That means people who are able to get access to weapons, who didn't go necessarily to Syria or Iraq, and who will perform attacks.
Do you consider Omar Mateen a lone wolf?
I'm not certain that the concept of lone wolf is really significant. I mean, you always need someone to encourage you, to provide you with weapons, etc. But it is very likely that it didn't have direct link or direct instructions from Raqqa. He probably took his decision on his own, just alleging pledge to ISIS at the last moment.
But the Islamic State group has called him a soldier of their caliphate. Now, earlier on this set, our terrorism expert, Wassim Nasser, here at France 24, was saying when they use that word, it means they've had a connection, they've had a contact with him before. They didn't use that word, for instance, for the San Bernardino shooters. So in this particular instance, that would suggest that there was prior contact between Omar Mateen and the Islamic State group.
Well, it is possible anyway.